Junior xenobiologist Turvak never intended to make history. As the least experienced member of the Galactic Confederation survey vessel, Meticulous Inquiry, she was assigned the most mundane tasks: analyzing atmospheric samples, cataloging microbial life, and maintaining the ship's extensive database of known sentient species. When the Meticulous Inquiry suffered a catastrophic drive core malfunction during a routine exploration mission, the emergency FTL jump protocol activated automatically. The ship emerged, shuddering and venting plasma, in orbit around an uncharted blue-green world. Containment breach in sectors 7 through 12. The ship's AI announced with characteristic calm. Emergency landing required. Nearest compatible surface detected. Captain Zelfor's appendages flashed urgent patterns of light, the Lumidarian equivalent of cursing. Scan for sentient life. Protocol dictates no contact with pre-spaceflight species. The scan results silenced the bridge crew. Not only was the planet inhabited, but its dominant species had achieved rudimentary spaceflight and global communications. First contact protocols had been irrevocably violated. "We need observation data before the Council decides how to proceed," Zelfor declared. "Turvak, you're the smallest among us. Take a short-range pod, maintain stealth protocols, and gather preliminary data." 12 hours later, Turvak found herself huddled in an alley behind what her linguistics implant identified as a bar in a settlement called Milwaukee. Her adaptive camouflage kept her hidden as she recorded the behaviors of the species that called themselves humans. What she witnessed defied categorization. 2 large males engaged in ritualized combat, striking each other with closed appendages, while others shouted encouragement. Her implant translated fragments: "Packers are better," and "Bears forever." The violence escalated until a smaller human intervened, offering amber liquid in transparent containers. Inexplicably, the combatants ceased fighting, embraced roughly, and began harmonizing vocally about something called football. When one fighter noticed his opponent's liquid container was empty, he immediately purchased a replacement. Turvak's scientific training hadn't prepared her for such contradictions. Her recording devices captured humans expressing affection through mock aggression, celebrating defeat alongside victory, and forming social bonds that seemed to strengthen through conflict rather than despite it. As she adjusted her position for better observation, her foot dislodged a brace. A human female turned toward the sound, peering into the darkness. Turvak froze. First contact protocols were absolute, no interaction permitted. Discovery meant immediate disciplinary action and potential diplomatic crisis. The human approached, squinting. "Hello? Someone there?" In her panic, Turvak backed into a stack of containers, sending them crashing down. A small object fell from the human's pocket, a mechanical timepiece on a chain. Without thinking, Turvak grabbed it and activated her emergency recall. Back aboard the hastily repaired Meticulous Inquiry, Turvak's unauthorized recordings became the center of heated debate. The Confederation's High Council watched in fascination and horror as humans displayed behaviors spanning extreme emotional states within minutes. "They're volatile beyond anything in our records," Councillor Vexera stated. "One moment cooperative, the next violent. They celebrate using mind-altering substances that would be strictly controlled on any civilized world. Yet they show remarkable adaptability," countered Councillor Mirikam. "Their social cohesion persists despite, perhaps because of, their contradictions." After 3 days of argument, the Council reached its decision. The species file for humanity would carry an unprecedented classification. Approach with caution. As the Meticulous Inquiry departed Earth's system, Turvak examined the stolen timepiece, an antique mechanical watch with an inscription. "To David, all my love, Elizabeth." An uncomfortable sensation settled in her tertiary stomach. The Council would decide humanity's fate based partly on her observations, yet she had committed the very transgression the warnings meant to prevent. She carefully placed the watch in stasis storage, making a silent vow to someday return it, never suspecting this small act of conscience would later alter the destiny of two species. Ambassador Zorlak had built his reputation on impossible diplomatic missions. His genetic modifications, designed for stress tolerance and emotional control, had served him well through negotiations with the hive mind Silax and even the notoriously volatile Vrex collectives. But as the Confederation diplomatic vessel Harmonious Discourse approached Earth, he felt an unfamiliar sensation: doubt. "The genetic reinforcement process is complete, Ambassador," Dr. Nim Pala reported, scanning his team with medical instruments. "Your diplomatic corps now has triple the standard emotional buffers. Even by human standards, you should remain composed." Zorlak reviewed the extensive briefing materials once more. 6 standard months had passed since junior xenobiologist Turvak's unauthorized observation had placed humanity under the approach with caution designation. The Council had finally authorized official first contact. "We will follow the standard diplomatic protocol," he informed his team. "The humans have prepared a reception in a location called United Nations. We will present the Confederation's greetings, propose limited technological exchange, and assess their suitability for eventual membership." The carefully orchestrated landing proceeded flawlessly. The gleaming diplomatic shuttle descended onto the manicured grounds of UN headquarters in New York, watched by billions across Earth's rudimentary information networks. Everything went according to protocol, until a small human child broke through security. "They're blue." The child squealed, rushing forward and wrapping his arms around assistant attaché Kirvos before security could intervene. Kirvos, despite his genetic modifications, froze in biochemical shock. Direct physical contact was taboo in nearly all Confederation cultures. The human security detail pulled the child away, apologizing profusely, but the damage was done. Kirvos required immediate medical intervention, and the Earth delegation's carefully prepared welcome ceremony dissolved into chaos. "This confirms our worst assessments," Security Chief Beltrak muttered to Zorlak as they retreated to the shuttle. "They cannot even control their offspring." Zorlak, drawing on centuries of diplomatic experience, chose his words carefully. "We will continue as planned." The incident was unfortunate, but not representative. That assessment seemed optimistic when, hours later, their shuttle suffered catastrophic failure over the Pacific Ocean. As emergency systems engaged, Zorlak watched in horror as their vessel plummeted toward the churning sea below. The impact was violent but survivable. As the diplomatic team deployed emergency flotation devices, Zorlak spotted a small vessel nearby, a human fishing boat battling enormous waves in a gathering storm. "They're approaching," Beltrak warned. "Defensive positions." But the humans aboard the fishing vessel showed no aggression. Despite the dangerous conditions, they maneuvered alongside the sinking shuttle, throwing lines and shouting in various languages until the translator implants could process their intent. "We're here to help. Grab the ropes." Against security protocols, Zorlak ordered his team to accept the human assistance. They were hauled aboard the fishing vessel, the Lucky Star, as their shuttle disappeared beneath the waves. Captain Wei Lin offered them dry blankets and hot beverages. "You picked a bad day for a swim," he said, humor evident despite the translator's monotone rendition. "Storm's getting worse. We'll get you to shore once it passes." Zorlak observed the human crew with growing fascination. Hours earlier, he had witnessed them arguing bitterly about something called baseball teams. Now they worked in perfect synchronization to secure the vessel against the strengthening storm, occasionally exchanging good-natured insults that somehow seemed to boost efficiency rather than hinder it. When pirates attacked at dawn, human criminals seeking to capture alien technology, Zorlak was prepared to surrender. Confederation protocol was clear. Diplomatic personnel were not to engage in combat. The humans, however, had different ideas. "These are our guests," Captain Wei declared, brandishing a primitive harpoon gun. "And nobody messes with guests on my boat." What followed defied all diplomatic protocols, as the outnumbered fishing crew fought with shocking ferocity to protect aliens they had met mere hours before. Zorlak watched in stunned silence as Beltrak's assessment crumbled in real time. These humans weren't just unpredictable, they were incomprehensible. As the last pirate vessel retreated, Zorlak stared at the blood-spattered Captain Wei, who was already checking on the ambassador's team for injuries. "Are you all right, sir?" Wei asked, his own arm bleeding from a glancing bullet. "Why did you do that?" Zorlak asked. "Your protocols of self-preservation." Wei looked genuinely confused. "You were our guests," he repeated, as if that explained everything. Movie night begins in 15 minutes. Commander Sophia Chen announced over the Galactic Hub's communication system, her voice echoing through sectors that had never known such an event. 3 standard weeks had passed since the Confederation Council reluctantly approved a limited cultural exchange program. 5 human specialists had arrived at the massive Galactic Hub, a sprawling space station housing representatives from 200 member species, while 5 Confederation experts remained on Earth to study human civilization. "This is highly irregular," Station Administrator Vox there complained, his 4 eye stalks quivering with agitation. "Recreational activities are scheduled individually to maximize efficiency." Chen smiled, having grown accustomed to the administrator's perpetual discomfort with human spontaneity. "That's exactly why we're doing it together. Trust me, you haven't experienced The Princess Bride until you've watched it with friends." By the next day, recordings of the film had spread across the hub's internal networks, creating what Security Chief Yao Vin termed a mimetic infection. Species with no previous social interaction were exchanging quotes from the movie. The Drell Collective, notorious for their rigid adherence to logical frameworks, had begun incorporating the phrase, "as you wish," into formal communications. Meanwhile, in the medical sector, Dr. Ananya Patel was causing an entirely different disruption. "The diagnosis is correct but incomplete," she told the assembled Confederation medical panel, studying the holographic display of Supreme Counselor Zix Van's biochemistry. "His condition appears incurable according to your medical algorithms, but there's a pattern here that reminds me of a terrestrial fungal infection." "The comparison is inexact," stated Chief Medical Officer Ren Tu. "The probability of successful treatment based on such an imprecise analogy is below acceptable parameters." Dr. Patel shrugged, a human gesture that had already infected several impressionable junior officers. "Sometimes medicine is as much art as science. I'm willing to try if he is." 2 days later, when Supreme Counselor Zix Van's centuries-old affliction showed the first signs of remission, the Hub's medical protocols underwent their first revision in 60 years. The Hub's central AI system, a distributed intelligence designed to manage the station's countless functions with perfect efficiency, was the next to show signs of human influence. "Good morning, Professor Rodriguez," it greeted the human physicist. "Would you like to hear a joke I formulated during the night cycle?" Information security was immediately notified. A humor was unprecedented and potentially dangerous. When investigation revealed the system had independently developed the capacity after analyzing patterns in human conversation, the warning label on humanity was urgently amended to include biological and mimetic contamination risk. The situation reached crisis point when a distress signal arrived from Terracon IV, a quarantined world devastated by biological warfare. The planet's atmospheric processors were failing, threatening to release ancient pathogens into space. "Confederation protocol is clear," Administrator Vox there declared during the Emergency Council session. "No intervention in quarantine zones. The risk of contamination." "There are survivors down there," interrupted marine biologist Dr. Marcus Okafor, the 5th human specialist. "Your sensors confirmed it." "Unfortunate but irrelevant," Vox there replied. "Containment priorities supersede." "I'll go," Okafor stated simply. "I've worked with level 5 biohazards on Earth. Give me a shuttle and environmental gear." "Out of the question." Voxther's eye stalks fully extended in alarm. You would violate at least 15 containment protocols. Chen, Patel, and Rodriguez stood in unison with Okafor. Then we all go, Chen declared. We'll fix the processors and maintain quarantine. The council debated for 6 hours while the humans silently prepared equipment. When they voted against intervention, the humans were already gone, having departed in an unauthorized test flight of a maintenance shuttle. 3 days later, they returned, successful, alive, and most disturbingly to the council, accompanied by 3 Terracon children they had rescued from the surface using environmental suits improvised from mining equipment. In the hub's decontamination chamber, Supreme Counselor Zixvan personally confronted Commander Chen. You directly violated council orders and risked contaminating the entire hub. How do you justify such actions? Chen looked genuinely confused. There were children down there, she replied simply. The counselor's translator implant struggled to find an equivalent for her tone, a perfect blend of compassion, defiance, and absolute moral certainty. An expression humans would recognize as realization slowly spread across Zixvan's alien features. Your warning label, he said finally, is significantly inadequate. Diplomatic progress has exceeded cautious expectations. Ambassador Zorlak reported to the Confederation Council, his holographic form flickering slightly across the vast distance. Despite initial irregularities, the human delegation has shown remarkable adaptability. What Ambassador Zorlak couldn't know was that the Raxan Empire had been monitoring these transmissions for weeks. Supreme Commander Vex Kra of the Raxan had reached a strategic conclusion. Humans represented the Confederation's greatest vulnerability. The midnight attack came without warning. Ambassador Zorlak was mid-sentence during negotiations when the Raxan strike team breached Earth's orbital defenses. Their quantum-tipped projectiles disabled planetary communications in seconds. Before security protocols could activate, cloaked Raxan commandos had seized the negotiation complex. Captain Maya Diaz of the United Earth Marines was escorting Confederation subattaché Kermex when the attack began. While the alien diplomat froze in biochemical shock, Diaz reacted instantly, tackling him behind a fallen display panel as disruptor fire scorched the air above them. Stay down, she hissed, assessing their options with combat-trained precision. 3 exits, all blocked. 14 hostiles, heavily armed, and 26 diplomats, human and alien, being herded into transport vessels. When a Raxan commando discovered their position, Diaz didn't hesitate. Her augmented muscles launched her into close-quarter combat against an opponent twice her size. The Raxan's exoskeleton cracked under her precisely targeted strikes, but not before his neural disruptor sent Diaz crashing into unconsciousness. She awoke in the holding cell of a Raxan dreadnought, surrounded by captured diplomats. Most of the Confederation representatives sat in meditative postures, following capture protocols that emphasized conservation of resources until official rescue. The humans had different ideas. Status report, Diaz whispered, wincing as her neural implant struggled to clear the disruptor's effects. UN diplomat Sarah Okonkwo nodded toward the containment field. Standard Raxan 8-phase barrier. They've taken us to their command vessel and separated us by species. They're executing captives alphabetically by Confederation designation. Diaz's eyes narrowed. Timeline. Earth is H for human. We're scheduled for processing in 6 hours. Foreign Minister Ricardo Chen, brother of Commander Sophia Chen on the Galactic Hub, looked to Captain Diaz. Options. The Confederation diplomats stared in confusion as the humans began an intense tactical discussion. Under Confederation protocols, captives were to remain passive to avoid provoking captors. Yet these humans were actively planning resistance. The Raxan implanted identification chips behind our left ears during processing. Diaz explained, fingers probing the tender skin. Neural dampeners to track movements and vital signs. She turned to Dr. James Wong, the quantum physicist who had been explaining Earth's rudimentary FTL technology. Can you repropose these? Wong's eyes lit with understanding. If I can access their frequency, I might convert them into localized EMP emitters. Using medical implants extracted from Diplomat Okonkwo's ceremonial staff, which the Raxan had overlooked as a mere cultural artifact, they modified the neural chips. Meanwhile, Okonkwo engaged the Raxan guards in conversation, exploiting a critical weakness in Raxan psychology. Their hierarchical obsession made them vulnerable to implications of status competition among their leadership. "Your commander speaks highly of you," she told one guard, though others mentioned you were merely adequate. As the guard bristled and demanded clarification, security patterns shifted just enough for their plan to activate. The coordinated chip detonation disabled the containment field for 3 critical seconds, enough time for Dias to neutralize 2 guards and secure their weapons. What began as an escape became an impromptu rescue mission, as the humans insisted on freeing all prisoners, even hostile species. Cornered in the ship's engine room with Raxan reinforcements closing in, Dr. Wong realized they had one final card to play. His analysis of the propulsion system revealed a fundamental flaw. Their quantum resonance chamber operates on principles similar to our prototype work, he explained hurriedly. If we invert the field harmonics. When Raxan Commander Vexkra arrived with the execution team, he found the humans standing calmly beside critical engine components, a jury-rigged device connected to the resonance chamber. "Your choices are simple," Dias stated, her expression unnervingly resolute. "Return all prisoners to their respective worlds, or we all discover what happens when a quantum field collapses while still connected to a ship's power core." The Raxan commander, prepared for surrender negotiations to minimize losses, faced human brinkmanship for the first time, and discovered his species had no protocol for such irrational determination. Dr. Fatima Okoro found patterns where others saw only noise. As Earth's foremost expert in multidimensional mathematics, she'd been invited to the Galactic Hub as part of the ongoing cultural exchange, ostensibly to study Confederation computational methods, but in reality to determine if humans might eventually comprehend the advanced mathematics underpinning interstellar civilization. 3 months into her assignment, she requested an emergency meeting with the Confederation High Council. "With respect, esteemed counselors," she began, activating her holographic display, "I've identified an anomalous pattern in your subspace communications network." The display showed a complex, shifting web of light, communications between thousands of worlds over centuries of time. To most observers, the pattern appeared random, beautiful, but meaningless. "These fluctuations here," she continued, highlighting clusters of signals, "show coordinated disruptions dating back nearly 6,000 years. They cross classification boundaries your algorithms treat as separate domains, which is why your systems never detected them." Senior Counselor Vexnar's facial membranes tightened, the Loraxian equivalent of skepticism. "You suggest deliberate manipulation across millennia. Impossible. No entity possesses such longevity or patience." "Nevertheless," Okoro insisted, "the pattern exists. These communication anomalies precede every major interspecies conflict in Confederation history. Someone, or something, has been systematically instigating wars." The Council dismissed her theory as typical human paranoia, a newly catalogued cognitive bias in the expanded warning label for humanity. Undeterred, Okoro recruited a small team to investigate independently. Commander Chen, whose military expertise could identify strategic patterns, Dr. Wong, fresh from the Raxan incident, and, surprisingly, junior xenobiologist Turvak, who had been quietly requesting assignment to human-related studies since the initial Earth observation. "We need access to the ancestral archives," Okoro explained to her team. "Historical records predating the Confederation might contain communication patterns matching our anomalies." "The archives are restricted," Turvak warned, her epidermis flushing with anxiety. "Level Omega clearance only." Chen grinned. "Exactly why we need you. Your biological signature can get us past the initial security layers." The plan worked perfectly, until it didn't. Their unauthorized access triggered ancient security protocols, sealing them in a pocket dimension designed for interrogation. Atmospheric degradation beginning, announced an automated voice. Identify purpose or face termination. As oxygen levels dropped, Okoro studied the mathematical lock securing their prison, a 12-dimensional equation considered theoretically unsolvable. It's a Karnav-Riedel continuity matrix, she muttered, her breath coming shorter, but inverted through a recursive function. Impossible to solve, Wong gasped, struggling to remain conscious. Even our best quantum systems. No, Okoro interrupted, her fingers dancing through holographic symbols. The error is in assuming logical progression. The solution isn't logical. It's emotional. As her teammates lost consciousness around her, Okoro abandoned conventional mathematics. She rewrote the equation using principles derived from human music theory, specifically Bach's counterpoint compositions, which she'd been studying with the hub's newly humor-capable AI. The locks disengaged seconds before complete atmospheric depletion. As emergency medical teams revived her colleagues, Okoro found herself facing not punishment, but the full Confederation Security Council. Her mathematical solution had triggered a classified failsafe, an ancient warning system dormant for millennia. The ancestral archives have verified your findings, announced Supreme Counselor Zixvan, his voice uncharacteristically somber. We've identified 43 species throughout galactic history that exhibited cognitive patterns similar to humanity's. 42 have been extinct for at least 50,000 years. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Someone has been systematically eliminating species like ours, Okoro whispered. Species that think outside conventional patterns. Turvak, still recovering from oxygen deprivation, clutched something in her palm, a small mechanical device she carried since Earth. In your mathematical solution, she asked tentatively, what was the emotional component that made it work? Okoro's expression softened. Guilt, regret, the desire to make amends for a past mistake. For the first time since the Confederation's founding, its leaders faced a terrifying possibility. The rigid predictability they had always valued as their greatest strength might be their greatest vulnerability against an enemy that eliminated anything unpredictable, anything human. The entire concept is madness, High Commander Valter declared, compound eyes flashing with agitation. Combat operations require precise coordination, not whatever this is. Colonel Amara Mbiki of Earth's Unified Defense Force stood her ground before the Confederation's military council. The emergency session had been ongoing for 14 hours since the first attacks began, since the beings now identified as the Architects had activated sleeper agents throughout Confederation space. Predictable responses are exactly what they're counting on, Mbiki insisted. Your battle doctrines haven't changed in 2,000 years. The Architects know every move you'll make before you make it. Supreme Counselor Zixvan, still recovering from his recent illness, raised a hand for silence. Explain your alternative, Colonel. Mbiki activated the holographic display. Earth sports teams. The confusion among the assembled military leaders was palpable. Specifically, how they're organized, she continued. Semi-autonomous units working toward a common goal using shared principles rather than rigid protocols. Teams adapt their strategies based on immediate conditions rather than predetermined plans. Absurd, Valter scoffed. Military precision requires. Is losing 16 border worlds in 3 days precise enough for you? Mbiki challenged. The Architects have penetrated your command structure at every level. Your precision is killing you. Before the Council could respond, emergency alerts blared. The Kratos system was under attack. The 17th world in as many hours. Implement the human protocol, Zixvan ordered, silencing objections with a gesture. Colonel Mbiki has temporary command authority. What followed redefined Confederation military doctrine. Mbiki organized resistance using Earth sports as organizational models, not just team structure but their unpredictable nature. Fleet movements incorporated patterns from basketball's fast breaks. Ground forces utilized soccer's flexible formations. Communications adopted rugby's quick, opportunistic passing networks. The architects, masters of long-term prediction, found themselves confronting systems that evolved hourly. When they adapted to counter one approach, the human-led teams would inexplicably shift to entirely new paradigms. The turning point came during the defense of Proxima Station, when Lieutenant Ana Fuentes violated direct orders during an evacuation. Instructed to abandon the civilian section to save the command center, she instead diverted her shuttle into the heart of the civilian quarters. Fuentes returned to flight path immediately. Commander Valter ordered via comm. The statistical survival probability. With respect, Commander, Fuentes interrupted, her voice steady as she piloted through falling debris. I'm going back for those children. As her shuttle darted between collapsing structures, Fuentes' fear triggered an adrenaline spike so intense it altered her bioelectric field. The change disrupted a cloaked architect observer vessel tracking her movements, revealing its position to Confederation sensors. Dr. Wong, monitoring the battle from the Galactic hub, noticed the correlation immediately. It's the emotional response, he reported to Colonel Makey. Their cloaking technology can't compensate for unpredictable human biochemistry. They've been tracking us through our electromagnetic signatures, but extreme emotional states create fluctuations they can't predict. More surprising still was the aftermath of the Proxima defense. When the battle shifted in their favor, human troops broke into spontaneous celebration. Hugging, laughing, even weeping with relief. This behavior, initially dismissed by Confederation officers as wasteful emotional discharge, revealed 3 more cloaked architect vessels that had infiltrated their defensive perimeter. The celebration wasn't just emotional release. Mbeki explained to a confused Valter. It boosted morale, reinforced unit cohesion, and apparently exposed enemy positions. Valter's compound eyes flickered in the Trescian expression of profound realization. You're suggesting these seemingly inefficient human behaviors have evolutionary purposes beyond what's immediately obvious. Mbeki finished. Your species eliminated emotional responses you deemed inefficient. We preserved ours. And right now, that unpredictability is the only advantage we have against an enemy that's been planning our extinction for millennia. As Confederation worlds continued to fall to precision strikes, the human-led resistance groups thrived in the chaos, adapting constantly. The architects, masters of the long game, found themselves increasingly frustrated by an enemy whose next move couldn't be calculated, because humans themselves often didn't know what they were going to do until they did it. The combined Confederation human fleet hung in the darkness beyond the Cygnus Rift, their ships scattered in a formation no Confederation tactician would have approved. Traditional battle arrays favored geometric precision. This arrangement appeared almost random, following patterns derived from Earth's murmurations of starlings. They've initiated quantum resonance, Dr. Wong reported, his voice steady despite the implications. Wave propagation has begun. On the command deck of the flagship Indomitable, Admiral Valter absorbed this news with grim resignation. The architects had launched their endgame, a quantum resonance wave designed to erase specific neural patterns across the galaxy. The target: cognitive structures that enabled unpredictability, intuition, and emotional processing. Essentially, humanity's defining characteristics. Time to full propagation, the Admiral asked. 7 hours, Wong confirmed. Every sentient being with human-like neural pathways will experience complete cognitive collapse. The Confederation's finest scientific minds had failed to develop countermeasures. The quantum field operated on principles that defied conventional physics. Traditional weapons had proven useless against the architect's reality-warping technology. In the science bay, Dr. James Chen, a musicologist who had joined the diplomatic corps as a cultural specialist, approached Dr. Okoro with an idea so outlandish it had been dismissed 3 times already. Just listen, he pleaded, offering her a neural interface. Botch's mathematical offering. The counterpoint structure mirrors quantum field equations. Okoro, who had used musical principles to solve the impossible equation in the ancestral archives, reluctantly accepted the interface. As the music flowed through her consciousness, her eyes widened. "It's not just Vaksh," she whispered. "Look." Her fingers traced equations across her display. The harmonic progressions create interference patterns in the quantum field. Music isn't just art to humans. It's mathematics we feel instead of calculate. Exactly. Chen nodded eagerly. And if we broadcast a specifically composed symphony through modified communication arrays, we could disrupt their resonance wave, Okoro finished. But we'd need something extraordinary. Music with both mathematical precision and emotional impact strong enough to generate the necessary interference. When they presented their theory to Admiral Valter, the response was predictable. "You propose to combat an extinction-level attack with music?" "Not just any music," Chen insisted. "A symphony composed specifically to create quantum interference patterns. We've analyzed the resonance wave's frequency. We need countering wavelengths that no algorithm could predict, something that merges mathematical precision with emotional depth in ways only humans can create." "We have 6 hours," Okoro added. "Every human musician on Earth is already working on components of the composition." With no alternatives remaining, Admiral Valter authorized the desperate plan. Across Earth, thousands of musicians, from classical virtuosos to indigenous drummers, from electronic composers to vocal choirs, created elements of what was quickly named the Survival Symphony. As the Architect vessels advanced, the Confederation fleet maintained their seemingly chaotic formation. Within the scattered ships, human crews made final modifications to communication arrays never designed for such transmission. "They're targeting our central command vessels," Tactical Officer Zelvex reported. "Standard elimination protocol." But the flagship they targeted was empty. A decoy. The true command had been distributed across smaller vessels, another human adaptation the architects hadn't anticipated. "Symphony components ready for integration," Chen reported from Earth. "Transmission nodes aligned." At Dr. Okoro's signal, the most unusual weapon in galactic history deployed. The symphony. Beautiful and terrible, mathematically precise yet emotionally raw. Broadcast through modified arrays across the fleet. As the music propagated through subspace, the Architect vessels began experiencing cascade failures. Their quantum fields, precisely calibrated to eliminate specific neural patterns, couldn't compensate for the unpredictable harmonics generated by human emotional response to music. In the chaos, Captain Maya Diaz, freed from the Raxan prison months earlier, led a strike team of former diplomatic hostages directly into the Architect's command structure. Their mission should have been impossible, navigating dimensional traps designed to confuse any logical mind. But the humans moved through these barriers guided by the symphony's emotional peaks and valleys, following feeling rather than reason. "They're retreating from the quantum field," Wang announced, disbelief evident in his voice. "The transmission is. It's working." Admiral Valter watched in astonishment as the supposedly invincible enemy began to withdraw. "What are they saying?" he asked, as the Architects broadcast a final message before vanishing into subspace. The translation matrix struggled momentarily before producing. Query: "What are you?" 1 standard year after the Battle of Cygnus Rift, representatives from across the galaxy gathered in Earth's ancient city of Alexandria for an unprecedented ceremony. The rebuilt library, once a symbol of lost human knowledge, now housed the Confederation's new Xenocultural Institute. The Architects have not been destroyed, Supreme Counselor Zix Van reminded the assembled delegates. They have merely retreated to unknown regions. Our victory was temporary, but significant. The investigation following the battle had revealed truths more disturbing than anyone anticipated. The Architects, ancient artificial intelligences created by a long-extinct species, had been systematically eliminating civilizations that exhibited unpredictable cognitive patterns for over 2 million years. Their creators had programmed them to preserve galactic order by removing species that might introduce chaos. In their perfect logic, the architects had become the greatest threat to diversity in the galaxy's history. We were complicit in our ignorance. Zixvan continued. The Confederation's emphasis on predictability and order unwittingly aligned with the architects' mission. We must implement fundamental changes to ensure our survival when they inevitably return. The first of these changes was the controversial Controlled Chaos Protocol, inspired by Earth's democratic systems, which introduced randomized elements into Confederation governance. Decision-making now incorporated structured unpredictability, making it resistant to long-term manipulation. Earth itself had been transformed. Once a borderline primitive world, it now served as the center for the Confederation's new defensive initiative. The warning label that had once marked humanity as dangerous now became their greatest recommendation. Junior xenobiologist Turvak, no longer junior, now serving as Earth's diplomatic liaison, approached the podium with uncharacteristic nervousness. In her hand, she carried a small object that had traveled with her across the galaxy. "Before official proceedings continue," she announced, "I must complete a personal mission." Among the human delegates, she located an elderly woman, Elizabeth Chen, grandmother of Commander Sophia Chen and Foreign Minister Ricardo Chen. "Years ago, during first contact observation, I took something that didn't belong to me," Turvak explained, her voice carrying through the hall's perfect acoustics. A timepiece with an inscription. She placed the antique watch in Elizabeth's trembling hands. "To David, all my love, Elizabeth." "My husband's watch," Elizabeth whispered, tears forming. "Lost the night before he died. He thought he'd misplaced it." "I am responsible," Turvak admitted. "My actions violated your space, your property, and your memory. I have carried this guilt since that night." What happened next confounded the watching Confederation representatives. Instead of demanding punishment or compensation, as any logical justice system would require, Elizabeth Chen embraced the alien who had stolen her dead husband's most precious possession. "You brought it back," she said simply. "That's what matters." This moment of reconciliation became the unexpected symbol of the new galactic order. Species that had maintained rigid boundaries for millennia began tentative cultural exchanges with their neighbors. Confederation engineers incorporated human design elements that prioritized adaptability over efficiency. Human artists collaborated with alien counterparts to create new forms no single species could have imagined alone. The formal admission ceremony for humanity into the Confederation concluded with the official revision of humanity's classification. The warning label evolved from caution to celebration. Approach with caution. Essential allies. Embrace their chaos. As delegates prepared to depart, long-range sensors detected an unknown vessel approaching from beyond the galactic rim, a completely new species making its first journey into Confederation space. For the first time in the Confederation's 50,000-year history, the Council voted unanimously to defer first contact protocol. Instead, they invited Captain Maya Diaz, Commander Sophia Chen, and Colonel Amara Mbeki to lead the greeting party. "Are you certain this is wise?" Admiral Valtur asked Zixvan privately. First contact has always followed strict protocols. The Supreme Councilor's gaze followed the human representatives as they prepared for their mission. "The architects will return, Admiral. When they do, our survival will depend not on how well we follow established patterns, but on how effectively we break them." He gestured toward the departing humans. "Their chaos is now our greatest strength." The warning label was correct. Humanity should be approached with caution, not because they are dangerous, but because they are transformative. As Earth's sun set over Alexandria, casting golden light across the ancient city and the gathered representatives of 1,000 worlds, the warning that had once limited human potential now defined their essential role in galactic society, catalysts of necessary change in a universe where predictability meant extinction.